Hi, I'm Lisa K. Donner, along with Jeff Charles, Keelan Ferris, Scott Cosenza, and Mark Angelides. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, the ongoing saga of Surreal, the great Fauci fiasco, goofy and confusing emails from America's top doc. We'll dig in. The Supremes, they keep us hanging on. We've got the latest court info for you. The failed mission to silence Trump. You can kick him out, but can you keep the rabble from talking about their man? Much to the displeasure of the big tech social media platforms. We'll play around in our kicker segment today with bizarre news you can use. Sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction, folks. And in the member zone today for our subscribers, TikTok police reform cometh? Time's running out for the Senate to put up or shut up. All this and more on this edition of the Conservative Five. To mask or not to mask, that is the question even Dr. Fauci can't seem to answer. A recent trove of email correspondence from the good doctor has rocked the news cycle. Fauci famously labeled the doc that everyone loves by Jill Biden, presented as a man obsessed with his popularity. Let's just say the emails from America's doc didn't paint a comforting picture. The Fauster sounded a lot like the famous Sally Field moment at the Oscars. They like me, they like me. But in the immortal words of T. Boone Pickens, the higher the monkey climbs, the more you see of his rhymes with mass. In the wake of the worldwide pandemic, which he ruled and reigned, it appears the bloom is off the rose. You know, Liberty Nation published the emails in full, and they generated quite a bit of chatter. Jeff, what's your take on the continuing saga of Dr. Anthony Fauci?
Well, I was told that I can't call anybody any names, so I'm just going to tell a quick story. So there were two men, a father and a son, who lived on the island of Crete, and they wanted to get out of Crete, and they didn't have a boat. So the dad made two pairs of wings from wax and feathers, and they started flying and flying and flying. And he had warned his son, don't fly too high or don't fly too low. But his son, whose name was Icarus, flew way too high. The sun melted the wax. He fell into the sea and died. And here we have the modern day story of Icarus, played by Dr. Anthony Fauci. This guy wanted to be a celebrity. He was a bureaucrat, and he was willing to say whatever he needed to say to get the primetime spot on CNN, as well as other news outlets. And now that these emails have been released, it seems like he flew a little bit too close to the sun. And as much as he liked Hillary Clinton, she could have called him up and said, hey, you better watch your emails. But he didn't. And so now we're seeing his downfall, at least in the minds of many Americans. I'm pretty sure that the activist media and the Democrats will still be propping him up as their COVID messiah. But I think the information is out now. The guy was lying about numerous things.
I love that story, Jeff, about Icarus. I think that's...
I knew you'd appreciate it.
Really does work.
That's right up your alley.
It is.
So Mark, has Dr. Anthony Fauci, through his emails, instilled trust?
Perhaps not trust. I mean, we've seen there's actually polls that are following Dr. Fauci's approval ratings, and he's dropped dramatically, much like the Black Lives Matter organization. They've both had a precipitous fall in the last few months in terms of popularity. And in fact, the latest polling shows that only 46% of people think that Fauci has actually helped. Now, imagine what that means. This is the guy who's running the entire narrative. He's the guy who was advising the president. This is, and only 46% of people think he's helped. That means that 54% of people think he's either done nothing of value or has actively hindered the recovery efforts from COVID-19, the bat virus.
The man went on the formerly most respected news magazine show in America, 60 Minutes, and lied to the American people. What else can we expect?
Yeah, it's very much a question of cover your behind. I think at the moment it's all fallout, right? Since the emails dropped, everything it's just madness for him. He's got to try and cover it this way and that way. And I think there's no clear way out for him. I think the sun is melting the wax right now.
Yeah, like you said, I think this points to the fact that it's time for him to go. The pandemic's over. These emails just kind of put the nail in the coffin. As you said, the approval ratings aren't really in his favor. And I think that it's time to take the pro Dr. Fauci signs off your front lawns. And I think it's time for him to exit out of the White House.
Do people actually have that, by the way? The Dr. Fauci signs?
Yeah. We love Fauci.
So do you guys think that Biden's going to get rid of him, or is he going to keep him on? That's what I want to know.
But Biden doesn't know who's doing it.
Well, that's true.
You get a 3-pack of "No Place for Hate," "I Heart Fauci," and "Gun-Free Home" sign. That's the new one.
Yeah.
Well, but maybe we're in the minority. I mean, believe it or not, there is a cult of Fauci out there, complete with pillows bearing his name. There's collectibles, including Fauci bobbleheads, Fauci action figures. One has to wonder, maybe there's a lot of people that really feel that, he saved the day. My issue with him is that he was too confusing. He just wasn't clear. One day it was A and then one day it was B. And it wasn't just with masks. I mean, today we had the news about the, hydrochloroquine. I got it out. And the Z-Packs. Basically, they're finding that what Donald Trump said, there's 200% increase of healing or something like that. Did anybody else read that story?
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah. I think, it's funny when you talk about his flip-flops, his back and forth. And to jump onto Jeff's ancient Greek mythology bandwagon, there was a dog called Cerberus who had 3 heads. And we have the World Health Organization led by Tedros Ghebreyesus Adhanom, who was obviously the member of the ruling Derg party, the communist party in Ethiopia. You have the CDC, who seem to be answering to the teachers' unions more than the American people or the US government. And you have Dr. Fauci also trying to, as Lisa said, he's trying to make a name for himself with whichever big news agency will take him. So you've got 3 heads all barking at the same time, and they're each barking to a different tune. And that's why it's so confusing. As you say, people don't know which of the dogs to follow here.
With Fauci, at first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, because I understand that with a novel pandemic like this, there might be some information that changes. Therefore, that may result in some inconsistency. But when it kept going on and on and on, I was like, does this guy even know what he's talking about? Or is he just making this up as he goes along? And going back to the hydroxychloroquine thing, that should be a huge deal, because remember when Trump talked about it, everybody was against it. They didn't even do any research. They just said, Trump said it, therefore we have to be against it. We don't care about the consequences. If this drug could have been used back then to help heal people, the number of deaths may have gone down. People probably died because the activist media and the Democrats didn't want to give Trump a win or acknowledge that maybe he was right about something. We can make fun of it, but also this has real consequences.
All right, but my issue is, why didn't Fauci stand up and not play politics and say, look, Let
me just stop you right there, Lisa. It's because he's not a doctor. He's a politician who happens to be a doctor. So he doesn't have it in him to do that. He is a politician first and always. That's who this guy is.
What did you say, Mark?
I said he hasn't actually seen a patient in 40 years. And let's remember his career and track record so far with the HIV epidemic. His numbers, even back then in the day, were out by millions. This is somebody who has a track record of being wrong. That he's wrong now shouldn't be a surprise to us.
I think he was even confused about what his role was. Was he supposed to be making the decision? Was he the spokesperson? Was he just the celebrity face? Was he acting as a politician? I don't even think he knew. He was, responding to emails that people were sending him at 2:00 in the morning saying, yeah, it's really tough. I'm pretty drained. He's 80 years old. I think that he was confused on what he was even supposed to be doing.
Well, Fauci burst onto the scene and basically scared the hell out of everyone. He was confused, he was befuddled, he was beloved, and everything in between. I wonder if when we look back in hindsight and wonder if Anthony Fauci was a savior or just a sinner. One thing for sure, it's doubtful that this is the last we've heard from America's doc. Thanks, panel. It seems the U.S. Supreme Court has decided to keep us hanging on. They have said they will take up two key issues this coming term, abortion rights and gun rights. Those are two of the hottest hot button issues out there. But there's more, oh, so much more, coming up on the High Court's docket. And nobody follows the docket more closely than our own legal eagle, Scott Cosenza, the one who has an Esquire after his name. So, Scott, you've had your ear to the ground on all things SCOTUS this week. What's the SCOTUS scoop?
Well, I was thinking and hoping, along with other court watchers, Lisa, that we might learn whether or not they were going to grant a third kind of milestone case for the next term. Lisa, court watchers, including myself, were a bit disappointed because we were hoping that the Supreme Court would announce this week whether they were going to take a case to decide whether or not affirmative action or race discrimination benefiting some and punishing others was going to continue to be legal in higher education and hiring and all sorts of things. They haven't said whether they're going to take that case. We had a situation where the Justice Department under Donald Trump sued Yale University for anti-Asian discrimination, and that was seen as a vehicle to try to get race-based affirmative action and discrimination before the Supreme Court, to decide for all Americans. But the Biden administration put the kibosh on that 2 short weeks after they took office. They love their racial discrimination. So what we're now waiting to see is if they will take the case. We have those abortion and guns cases that were taken, and we know that because 4 justices need to vote yes to advance a case to be included on the court's docket, that's what it will take. And if we do see it in the affirmative action case, along with the abortion and guns cases, well, conservatives are very happy with that because they think that it means that the conservatives on the court are looking to move these cases forward with a result that will please conservatives.
But Scott, that's a great point. This is what I've been wanting to ask you. Actually, I was going to message you earlier about it, but what you tell us about these cases, it's most surprising that these 2 cases in particular, the gun case and the abortion case, have been taken at all. And as you say, it takes the 4 justices to agree to hear it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will rule. The 4 justices that choose to hear the case will rule in the way that conservatives or progressives think that they will. I mean, this is quite clear. This is probably Trump's most lasting legacy here, unless, of course, there's a second act coming down the line. That there are the conservative justices on the case, but we don't actually know which justices chose to hear these cases. It might have been a clean sweep of 9, but it has to be a minimum of 4.
Oh, wait,
but I want to ask Scott a question, if I may. Scott, do you think that the 4 justices that chose to hear the case on abortion and guns were Thomas Alito, Gorsuch, and Coney Barrett? Do you think that was those 4?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what.
All right, so they don't publish, they don't tell you who voted.
No.
Is that right, Scott?
That's correct. So who votes to advance a case to the court's docket, right? So there are many, many thousands of people who want their cases heard by the Supreme Court. Only 100 or so get lucky enough to have that case picked up. They vote themselves which cases they're going to hear of those many applicants. Minimum of 4 justices to get on the docket. They never publish who the 4 are. Justices may in the future, sometimes you'll see it like an academic conference, they might mention if they voted to advance a case forward, but it's not like it's a published document or record.
I think that what we're seeing here, this is why the left went so hard against Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. This is why they trotted out people to accuse Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. This is why they went so hard against Neil Gorsuch even before he was announced. Like this is when Obama said elections have consequences, these are the consequences. And really, these are cases that should be taken up. So I'm glad that it's happening. It, like Mark said, it's not a guarantee that it's going to go the way that conservatives want it to go, but there's a much better chance of it happening if the court had remained the same and Trump hadn't appointed who he appointed.
This is why that they're trying to undo the Trump legacy in every possible way, which I think we're talking about later on the show. But
Sheldon Whitehouse, a U.S. senator who's on the Judiciary Committee, has made it his kind of mission in life since November to sort of frustrate the court because of Donald Trump's appointments. I just saw a story today where they've now asked the I'm trying to remember, U.S. Marshal Service, I think, the people who are in charge of guarding and transporting Supreme Court justices for their security.
Tommy Lee Jones, right?
They no, that's something else, Mark. You continue your search for the one-armed killer over there. And what they've asked
the Richard
for,
Kimball Foundation, if you feel you've been found guilty for a crime you did not commit.
Okay, we're talking about the fugitive, Keelan. So probably 20 decades before you even born. Power. Go ahead.
I'm interested to see how the media is going to spin this when the next session comes. I think when Amy Coney Barrett was, selected by Donald Trump, a lot of the media spun that, Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. And I wonder if, once we get to this case, the media is going to spin this as, oh my gosh, we're going to lose Roe v. Wade. They're not going to allow abortions anywhere in the country anymore, which is not what this is about.
So when people apply to the Supreme Court, they state a question presented. So they suggest that the court should say, we're going to take this case to answer the following question presented. For instance, in the Harvard Asian affirmative action racism case, the question presented that the petitioners wish the court to accept is whether or not the Supreme Court's own previous rulings are constitutional in allowing race-based discrimination, right? Well, the Supreme Court can take the case, but then tweak or tailor the question presented. So you have to look at both things to decide where the court may then go in the future with their ruling. And in the abortion case that's going to be heard in the fall, the question presented is whether or not a state can enact early term restrictions on abortion pre-viability. So that might lead them to a place where they could actually overturn Roe. This is animating both liberals and conservatives, on either side of that issue.
But I think it's fair to say that the Supreme Court has been, really a disappointment to a lot of conservatives. I mean, we've got a lot of conservative judges on there. And it seems like when it's time to step up to the conservative bar, they're not willing to do. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, if there was any time where the Supreme Court was not going to be a disappointment to conservatives, this is probably the best chance we've got here. I mean, and these are only two cases. There will be more coming down the road. Again, the legacy of what Trump did with the court is going to keep going. And I'm with Keelan. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Democrats and the media react to it, because I like a good laugh. We all like a good laugh. I watch stand up, but I also watch the way Democrats freak out. You know what I can't wait to see? All the women who are going to go to Capitol Hill wearing Handmaid's Tale costumes. Because, they did that here in Austin, and it was hilarious. I even started watching the show. I like the show, but just seeing the pageantry of their ridiculous absurdity is going to be highly entertaining. I can't wait.
It's kind of a cute look, I think.
Sorry, Jeff, funny you mentioned the Handmaid's Tale lot, because I was covering the protests in the UK a couple of years ago for LibertyNation.com, and we had the Handmaid's Tale outfits. It was nothing to do with abortion. It was nothing to do with women's rights. It was nothing to do with the subjugation of women or the division of sexes. It was to do with Brexit. And yet people thought, well, this is such a great outfit. I mean, I love the book. I think Margaret Atwood I think she's my favorite female writer. I think she's fantastic. But the Handmaid's Tale had nothing to do with Brexit. It's just an excuse to dress up in this wonderful dystopian outfit. And it wouldn't surprise me if you saw that coming in for the anti-gun marches, for the anti-farm aid marches, and people will just wear that stuff because it's a great costume.
Yeah, I think they just like wearing it at this point.
The Handmaid's Tale,
it doesn't even mean anything anymore.
The Handmaid's Tale is the new black. It works with everything.
Can you give us a little synopsis on the gun rights case that they're looking into?
So that's a case out of New York, filed by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. It has to do with whether or not people have the right to carry a gun outside their home. Basically, the New York State authorities have a system where the law there, and this is the law in many of the very tightly controlled jurisdictions with respect to guns. New Jersey has a similar law in which you apply to carry a gun, and there's no standard that you can claim to meet, which then entitles you by right to that right to carry. So if I have visual acuity that's whatever within the bounds, and I pass the test for the knowledge of the roads, I have to be issued a driver's license if I meet the standards. They can't say, well, yeah, but I don't like the look of you. I don't think you're going to use this well. You're probably going to drive to ne'er-do-well places, or, waste your time driving. Take public transportation. They can't say that. But that is what they say with guns, which is that there's no measurable standard. So it basically becomes, if you're friends with a politician, or you make campaign donations, or if you're very lucky, then you can get it, but not by right. And that's what this case will hopefully establish.
Well, it seems straightforward to me, but I'm not on the U.S. Supreme Court. And as with most things court-related these days, we'll be on pins and needles waiting to hear their rulings, as well as waiting to hear about any new cases they might want to take up. Thanks, guys. Last week, Facebook informed former President Donald Trump that he will have to suffer the indignity of its ham-fisted decision and will be suspended from posting on their platform until 2023. The reason? Trump's posts are a risk to public safety. But a study conducted by none other than the New York Times shows that silencing Mr. Trump ain't all that easy. The newspaper found that Facebook is still chock full of everything Trump. Surprise, surprise. The newest member of the Liberty Nation tribe, Keelan Ferris, is here with us. A special welcome to C5, Keelan.
Woo! Welcome, Keelan.
Woo! So this is right in your wheelhouse. What is the Gray Lady's point here?
Yeah, so what the New York Times published, I feel like I could have told you myself, but maybe since the New York Times is telling you, maybe some of the liberals will actually listen. But what they're saying is just because Donald Trump no longer has an account and isn't posting himself doesn't mean that all things Trump went away. He still has millions of people on both Facebook and Twitter that support him, voted for him. There's pro-Trump groups. There's conservative social media accounts that are essentially just taking what Donald Trump is putting on his own website and his statements and just posting them online anyway. So what Trump is saying is still getting on social media. Only 11 out of the 89 of his statements since he was banned in January have actually surpassed his median likes and shares from when he had his account. So some of these posts that other people are sharing are getting more attention or just as much attention as if Donald Trump were posting them himself. Some of them don't get as much, but essentially what they found is that just because you got rid of Donald Trump doesn't mean everything Donald Trump went away. He's still got so many people that share what he's talking about. Some get more attention than others, like I said. When he likes to bash on some of the Republicans and types of Republicans with a name that I won't share, but that gets a lot of attention. And even liberal news outlets share it as well. So everyone is contributing to it. When he talks about more culture war things as well, that gets a lot of attention. But basically what they found is that, even though he personally is gone off these social media accounts, doesn't mean his message and, things related to him and his family and, what he's about go away as well.
Keelan, that really plays in with the idea that, so many people in the media seem to think that Trump's success was about Trump. And I'm sure President Donald Trump actually thinks that too, that the success is about him, but it never was. It was never about that. There's always it's not as though 70 plus million people turned around one day in 2016 and said, you know what, that's the guy for me. There was the undercurrent. And he just embodied what was happening there, and call it the MAGA movement, if you will, or the America First movement, or the strident conservatism, or the radical
swamp movement is what I favor.
The anti-swamp movement.
That's the marrow of it.
Yeah, that's what he embodied. Now, it wasn't Donald Trump himself. It was the movement. And they can silence Donald Trump, as you've rightly pointed out there, Keelan. But they can't silence the message or the feeling that is throbbing through the veins of the American people.
Well, but I just like to argue that they really can't silence him. I mean, if tens of thousands of people are picking up on what he's saying, I mean, I'm wondering, is this article in the Times making, Jeff, a not so subtle case to ban all these people that agree with Trump? I mean, in other words, if you say the word Trump, boom, you're going to be algorithmed off the site?
Oh, I think that's definitely what they want to push towards. I don't think that, but here's the thing, even if they do that, they still can't silence it because we can go to another platform. Even if they try to shut that down, there are ways around it. I mean, this is like the 2021 version of like Rush Limbaugh. He found a way to get around the media through radio. We're doing the same thing here. And I think what Mark just said illustrates just how little the left understands the right. I mean, and sometimes I wonder if they know that what they're saying is false and they're just lying to their audience. But I think that they just don't understand because they don't talk to people outside of their bubble very often. So, and then the other aspect of it too is that Trump ain't going anywhere. Like, just because you ban him from Facebook, he had that blog and they recently shut it down. That was a choice that they made. And his spokesperson said that was only part of a wider effort. Like, people don't know Trump is doing stuff behind the scenes. And I keep saying this on this panel and elsewhere. Trump is making moves. We don't know exactly what they are yet.
History is replete with examples of people who were insurgent power, leaders of insurgent powers, and then were banished in some form and then came back stronger than they originally arrived. So it's not out of the bounds of history to see that happen.
You know, yeah, and it could take the form of him making his own social media site. His spokesperson did say it would have something to do with social media. So he's going to be back, and he's starting to do rallies again. No, you can't silence him. It's a fool's errand.
When Julius Caesar was essentially sent off to
you were going to go into Julius.
You knew I was going to bring that up, right?
Yeah.
So he was sent to Spain to get rid of him, but then he came back. Obviously, he'd mined Spain for wealth and for position back in Rome, and when he came back, he came back a conquering hero. Now, I'm not positive that's what's going to happen to Donald Trump, carried on the standard with the laurels around his head and somebody whispering behind him, "Remember, you are not a god." That might not happen, but he will certainly be a very powerful force in conservative politics going forward.
Trump's going to need more than a whisper, I think.
Yeah, he's gonna need like a choir singing that behind him.
You know, this whole thing reminds me of parenting. When you have a little kid and he wants ice cream, and he wants ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, a parent doesn't give it to him. I mean, they say once is enough. And so I think what happens is the kid wants it more and more and more. You know, you can always, basically, when you withhold something from somebody, they want it more. And I think, Keelan, you know, you made an interesting point. You can't shut these people up. You can't shut everybody up. And you try to take away the person that they're interested in. And what happens?
Doesn't work. It really doesn't work because I feel like it was a little bit of virtue signaling, even taking him down, because so many people were relieved. And even when they decided to extend the ban, so many people are like, "Oh, thank goodness, you know, he won't be on these platforms anymore. His message, you know, he won't be, sharing hate and no longer being a risk to the public." But as we can see, it didn't even do that much. So I think it might just be another form of virtue signaling. I'm sure Facebook and Twitter, they do their own research. They see, how many times Trump's name is mentioned in a positive or negative light. They can tell based on their algorithms, who's sharing his statements, who's still talking about him, who still supports him. And they know, this ban might not really do all that much because he's just going to find another way to share his message and, speak to his supporters. But
exactly. And it makes him all the more enticing, don't you think, Scott?
Well, yes, perhaps. I think what it does even more, though, Lisa, is reveal the banners and reveal their corruption. That's sort of what I take from it even more, is that, the New York Times, we quoted from them, but they have no credibility with me. Dr. Fauci has no credibility with me. Facebook, Twitter, they have no credibility because they will let people and organizations or say the most vile things against Donald Trump, for instance, or conservatives or libertarians, for instance. Meanwhile, when it comes to Trump or a conservative, they are held to some ultra strict standard by which no one really can succeed in social media, with how sort of like the quick hit of it, right? It's not all about considered statements that are through 3 layers of filtering. Well, that's not a problem for people on the left because they're not held to any standards like that. But for Trump and everybody else, it is. And that just reveals their bottomless corruption, I think.
Scott,
Facebook.
I do wonder if this is actually not part of a broader business marketing strategy, because when they ban somebody, people talk about it. That increases the number of times people read these particular articles. They click, they retweet. I mean, I think that even the banning of Donald Trump has been in many ways very good for Facebook, Twitter, the legacy media print output, and in terms of their readership and their clickability, their likability, and the very fact that they've banned him and that there's a certain amount of suppression going on, what it means is that everybody thinks they have to share it around because nobody's going to see it otherwise. And I think they've actually made it's regrettable, but it's a smart business decision from them, because I believe that they're actually making more profits by, continuing the ban.
At least that would make sense in a way I could appreciate, for Zuck anyway. If it's just a capitalistic endeavor, it might have some value.
And that's the thing. It could be capitalistic. It could just be virtue signaling. It could be both. But what we do know that it's not. It has nothing to do with safeguarding people and preventing political violence or anything like that. Facebook is actively allowing the Chinese Communist Party to use their platform to propagandize. They're letting the CCP use their platform to whitewash what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims. Like they are in bed with communists, helping them to spread propaganda. So this has nothing to do with human. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about violence. They don't care about any of that stuff. This is ideological and probably capitalistic as well.
Yeah, nothing to do with ethics or morals. I mean, Twitter still has the Ayatollah on their platform, and the Nation of Islam leader, who's a well-known anti-Semite, as well as a lot of other anti-Semites.
Well, this whole big tech banning has just got to be dealt with. But, does Congress have the stuff to do it? And frankly, do they even know what they want to do? I mean, they have them up on Capitol Hill, and then they go away and nothing happens. One thing for sure, they can't just wave their magic wand and expect people to forget Donald Trump, if for no other reason than he won't let them. And the beat goes on. Panel, thanks. Every now and again, the C5 panel likes to try its hand at finding news that might otherwise go unnoticed in this rancorous media environment. Some of it's funny, some of it's just plain weird. Each member of our panel comes before you today with hat in hand and with a wild one that we hope will bring you a little bit of laughter. Now, we're a competitive bunch, so let's see who's got the best of the weirdest. All right, panel, who's going to be large and in charge and go first?
I always feel...
Oh, chickens. Come on, step up to the plate.
Yeah, I'm up. So mine now, I didn't want to go first with mine, Lisa, because this is the period where you may have to cover your ears, because I'm well aware of your stomach sensitivity. So if I may, I'd like to introduce a story that's been covering not only Joe Biden, not only CNN reporters, it's the cicadas, the Brood 10 cicadas, Brood X cicadas that have been swamping the nation. Now, the story here is that people are actually eating the cicadas, these beautiful bugs. There we go. Cover your ears. It only gets worse.
Mark, I have to interrupt and just say, for those who only speak American English, we're talking about the cicadas.
Cicadas.
Please resume. Yeah.
Oh, apologies.
What did he say?
I said
cicadas, which is, I don't know what that is.
Oh, cicadas. Okay, yeah. You say cicadas, I say
the British English is terrible for this kind of thing, pronunciation. But so anyway, people are eating these cicadas and they're sharing recipes online. Now, I've got to tell you, I am probably the only person on the panel this evening, I guess, that has regularly eaten cicadas and cicadas, for that matter, both the full body and the full body and the larval form. When I spent my decade or so in China, it's a very popular dish served up on a plate or on kebab skewers for the full-bodied ones. And I got to tell you, they are with a nice cold beer on a summer's night.
Oh, somebody stop!
Dude, Mark.
Stop him right now.
I know that the food in the UK is pretty bad, but is it so bad that you got to eat bugs?
We don't have cicadas in the UK. This is when I was living in China.
Mark, I'm happy to tell you that for the price of a plane ticket, it's all you can eat in these parts right now. You can have your fill.
This is why we can never let the Chinese be in charge. They eat things like cicadas
and bats.
No, this is the point. People in the US are now eating the cicadas. Now, I got to tell you, this is a worldwide phenomenon, not just for cicadas, but whenever there's an overflow of certain bugs, like people tend to eat them. For example, in Australia a few years ago, there was a swarm of moths, and they were covering windows. That's how heavy they were. So people would put them in the crock pot and cook them up. It's not
Mark, that's a decidedly not good enough reason to eat moths for anybody who has a secondary option like anything else. I'm just saying.
So instead of vegan to a meat eater, Scott.
How many thousand moths does a person need to eat to constitute a meal?
Okay,
they were big moths, so probably about six.
You would consider eating a cicada.
In starvation
I just
times,
lost my faith in humanity from having heard that.
Yeah, I lost my faith in our managing editor.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I think I just won this whole competition. We may stop the thing now. And call it a day. What do you reckon, Lisa K. Donna?
Keelan has the floor.
I probably have a worse animal, insect related story. So I'm on the East Coast, and we're dealing with cicadas, but thank God I don't live in LA because they have peacocks roaming around Pasadena. So I guess when you don't have to have an alarm clock over there, you just get woken up by a screeching sound of a very pretty bird, but a very annoying one. So
yeah, I mean that's the problem. Apparently, there's so many peacocks, and they make this horrible noise.
Yeah, I will take the few weeks of cicadas for the endless peacocks apparently roaming on everyone's backyards, front yards. They'll come up to you at restaurants. So LA just banned residents from feeding them. There's people that have tried to hit them with their cars. Because the peacocks destroy property and I guess have
they're
damaged.
So pretty though.
Tools. Yeah, they're
beautiful birdies.
My husband liked deer, and I'm sick of them eating all my flowers.
Yeah, well, peacocks apparently aren't any better, and some want them gone the easy way or the hard way. But I guess we'll see some people start to make money on luring them in and capturing them and bringing them to zoos and stuff like that. But it's definitely a problem over there that I would want absolutely nothing to deal with.
Scott,
it's funny that reminds me of when back when I lived in California. That's where I'm from. I had a job where I drove a lot, and I was in Orange County, and I was in a parking lot after having talked to a customer, and I was doing a little bit of work, and I look up, and there's just this random peacock just sitting there. This would have been over a decade ago. So I had no idea that this was going to become more of a thing. Back then, it was strange, but now it's apparently in that area. They're blossoming.
But that's a beautiful, beautiful experience, Jeff.
It was cool.
Driving around randomly and a peacock wanders across your path.
If you harvested and ate that bird, that might have stopped the problem way back when. But you did nothing 10 years ago, and look where we are today.
You audience, please
I am
complicit.
Send your letters to Jeff Charles.
Yeah, it's all your fault.
Because peacock could be on the menu for.
Okay. We got to change this up, Scott.
They say it's one of the tastiest of the flightless birds. So
no. I'm going to get
Peacocks are not flightless. Peacocks fly.
It's just a line I wanted to throw out there. Everybody knows it's really penguin.
It takes them a while, but they fly.
Everybody knows penguin. Penguin is the best of the flightless bird anyway. So my story concerns the double album Self-Portrait by Bob Dylan and Mr. Howard Simon of California, who returned it to the University Heights Library in Ohio only 48 years late. He returned it with a $175 late fee that he calculated himself. Now, to his credit, it is a double album, so maybe we really only need to count it as 24 years late, compared to a regular album. Need double the listing time on that one.
So my question is, why didn't he, pay the $175, but sell it on eBay? Isn't it worth something?
Well, they say vinyl is having a comeback, Lisa, and with inflation, who knows? Maybe he could have gotten quite a bit more for it.
I know somebody on this panel that spins vinyl.
Yeah. I am all about the vinyl. I don't own a CD player. I have beautiful vinyl pieces.
Do you spin vinyl as you're eating your cicada sandwich?
Do I spin them? No, I just let them play. But I don't eat cicada sandwiches in this country where I am now. But
they say you can use a cicada wing as a replacement phonograph needle in a pinch. That's a prepper tip for the day for you, Mark.
Hey, if you want to go down that route, I can say that I have seen people use them as flossing devices, the wings. But in terms of a record, yeah, I mean, I'm a very honest guy, but I would be tempted to think, well, I'll pay the fine, and then, to be honest, Bob Dylan, I'd probably keep the record, but sell it on. It's probably worth a lot. 48 years old.
All right, Jeff, what do you got for us?
Okay, I've got Trump's pants, and I don't literally have his pants, but there was this whole story about, I can't remember where he was, but he was standing on a stage and his pants were wrinkled. And I even saw some of this on Twitter, and people were freaking out over it. Like, what's wrong with his pants? What's wrong with his pants? I'm like, why do you even care? Who cares about his pants? But then when I looked at it, and the fact that Snopes even did some investigating on it, and I don't blame Snopes because Snopes claims that people asked them to look into this. But when I saw the picture, I kind of got a little bit depressed because I'm like, that man made all that money. He made all that money, and he can't have a guy to iron his pants for him. I mean, what's going on, Trump? Let's go. And they thought he was wearing his pants backwards. And I'm like, are we going back to crisscross? My first CD that I ever owned. Like, I'm like, no, he's not wearing them backwards, and he's not wearing them backwards. Who cares? But I'm like, but Snopes actually dug deep and found that in 2017, Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, used to steam his pants for him while he was wearing them. So very interesting.
That is a bizarre story.
If a billionaire in the United States of America who's a former president can't have a good valet to attend to his pants, I mean, this is a world I don't even want to live in.
No. The important thing about that story is that people actually believe that he managed to. They blamed it. I saw this all over Twitter. They blamed it on because obviously they want to express it across the aisle, as it were. That Trump is obviously suffering from cognitive dementia of some description, so he put his pants on backwards. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I believe that all of us here are fairly good with our cognitive abilities at the moment. Could we put on a pair of pants, do the zip up, do the button at the top, and then tie the belt behind our backs?
I don't think so. That's some skill.
Yeah, I mean, that shows.
No, Mark, but I could have a pair of skill. I could have a pair of pants on and take them off, buttoned and buckled, and throw them somewhere, and then in a pinch grab them and put them on without doing any of that mess backwards. So it's
like when you're running from the police or something.
Listen,
all right. Well,
that's a Saturday night, Jeff. I
can tell this conversation is descending. So we're going to go to my contribution, which is a little video that we're going to roll for you in a couple seconds. So basically, a couple years ago, we took the kids out to Wyoming. It was the first time I was in Jackson Hole. It's really amazing. I mean, it's amazingly beautiful, but you do run into bears there. And But you don't expect one to kind of come into your porch or your home, but the bear comes over the wall. Her two dogs are barking. The bear is going for the dog. She comes out of the house, grabs the bear, shoves the bear back down, and takes her dog. I think she's just amazingly brave. So that's my story.
The story sounds fake, but once you see the video,
don't get between a bear and her cubs works for different species, not just bears, humans too, right?
She needs some kind of medal of freedom or something for that.
Yeah, don't get between a teen and her puppies.
When Goldilocks strikes back.
All right.
That should have been there.
So we're going to go around quickly and vote. Who's got the most bizarro story? We're going to start with you, Jeffrey.
I got to go with the cicadas. I mean, I can't say anything about it. Like, I'm just so taken aback. Like the cicadas, I knew people were eating them, but finding out that my managing editor eats cicadas, that's just depressing. I'm sorry, I can't. I just can't.
You don't have to say it that way, Jeff, just because he did. You can say it the right way.
I feel like I had to say it the way he said it because he's the one that I'm mad at right now for eating.
Okay, Scott, go vote.
He does set our schedules from time to time, so perhaps we should say it.
I say schedules
he does.
Too.
I too will vote for the cicada story, and I'll say it that way once for you.
Keelan.
I'm kind of over the cicadas or cicadas. I'm not sure how you're saying it, but I'm going to go with the bear story. Yeah. I'm over the cicadas.
I think the bear story is amazing, but cicadas wins. It's too gross, too bizarre.
I don't get a vote.
Well, you win.
No, you eat bugs. You don't get a vote.
Hey, Jeff, I was going to vote for when you opened up and saying, I've got Trump's pants. That was the win for me. I'm in. You got Trump's pants. I'm your man.
Well, folks, we hope you've had a good time and you've enjoyed our bizarre news segment. Thanks for joining us. And remember, there's nothing more bizarre than our current political climate. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all our TV productions. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, surf on over to libertynation.com. Sign up for our new member zone, just $29.99 for the year. This has been a production of libertynationnews.com, conservative news where truth matters.